the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, March 18th. I hope everybody is having a great week so far and ready for another episode of the Yaron Brook Show. All right, we're going to jump in with with an update on Iran, on the war in Iran, and it's like every day there's something new going on there and important. No video, thank you. All right, there we go. All right, but let me start by saying I was wrong about something yesterday. On the Yaron Brook Show, I like to correct my mistakes when I make them, so we're going to do that first. I think the mistake I made yesterday is related to the fact that there was no video a minute ago. I have to admit, I'm taking drugs to deal with this massive attack of sandflies on me, and that is maybe having an impact. Anyway, yesterday I said that. That the Czech, I'm laughing now because it's kind of funny that I said this, that the Czech Republic and Austria were sending ships to the Straits of Hormuz. And of course, that's ridiculous. The Czech Republic and Austria are landlocked countries with no ports and no navies and no ships and no anything else like that. And I read it online and I didn't think, and I just reported to you. So I apologize for that. It was a stupid mistake, something I should have known about. I should have known that it was ridiculous. And indeed, today I saw another one. I don't know if it's not for the same source, but another thing about Poland sending 2 aircraft carriers. But here I knew Poland doesn't have 2 aircraft carriers, doesn't have one. It does have a navy, but it doesn't have aircraft carriers. And I remembered the error I made yesterday, so I didn't do it again. So I'm learning from my own mistakes. I will try. It rarely happens, but once in a while it does happen, where I say something that was completely wrong. That one was ridiculous. Because I've been to Austria. I know Austria. I know where Czech Republic is. I know they're landlocked. All right, fog of war and all of that. Mind fog of war, I guess, and all of that. All right. Yeah, the antihistamines are maybe doing the trick on me a little bit. That is, and anyway, let's keep going on Iran, and this is all the stuff I'll say today. For the most part, is verified. The stuff is not verified. I will say that it's not verified, so that we are all on the same. We're all on the same page. All right. Israel this morning confirmed the elimination of Ismail Khatib in Tehran. The Israelis assassinated him last night. Khatib was basically the head of the Ministry of Intelligence of Iran. A post he was appointed to in 2021 by Ali Khamenei. He's held several key positions within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He is both a mullah and a member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and corps, not corps, corps. Corps. And I don't know why in English you put a P there when you're not supposed to pronounce the P. It's very confusing, people. Fix your English spelling. It really is bizarre. Anyway, I tell you to phonetically say words, and then phonics is out the window and doesn't mean anything. Let's see. Yes, headed the Ministry of Intelligence, played a significant role in directing arrest and killing of demonstrators during the Gulf Revolution and during the recent protests. This January. But again, to remind you, also he ran the intelligence department during the Masha Amini protests, the Gulf Revolution in 22-23. He's got a lot of blood on his hands, this guy. And of course, he also oversaw intelligence operations against Israel, against the United States, including potentially the operation that was aimed at trying to assassinate Donald Trump. So he was assassinated last night, and basically Israel is going through one by one, really everybody in positions of significance within the administration, and eliminating them. And you have to take into account that this is really unprecedented. It really is unprecedented for during a war to go after the political leadership of the opposing country. Military leadership, okay. But the political leadership, it's very, very rare. And certainly kind of having the systematic approach of taking leader after leader after leader of a supposedly, according to the United Nations, sovereign country, I can't think of a single war where this is happening. And I think this is making a lot of people around the world pretty uncomfortable and fearful. Usually the idea is you don't want to take out the other party's political leadership because then they could take out yours. That legitimizes taking out yours. But here, Israel doesn't care. Israel doesn't care about that legitimacy. It is going after the people truly responsible for the attacks on it, truly responsible for the nuclear program, for the ballistic missile program, for all the sins, the terrorism, the support of Hamas, the support of Hezbollah, all the sins of the Iranian regime. They're going after the people who are most responsible for those. And maybe in the first time in history, a military conflict, Israel is directly punishing those who are most responsible. They're not going to walk away from this. They're not going to get asylum in Russia. They're not going to continue living their lives. They're dead. And Israel's now killed a significant number of the people responsible for the Islamic Republic's sins from the last 40 years. And it continues. Indeed, yesterday's elimination of Ali Lamijani, is stunned the Iranian elites, at least according to intelligence. It stunned the Iranian elites because, everybody knew that Israel was trying to kill him. He had taken all the protective measures. He had, hidden. Khamenei, everybody knew where he was or assumed they knew where he was. But here, and everybody assumed Israel would never go after him. But after Khamenei was taken out, the assumption was, they're going after the leadership. They did the same thing in the 12-day war, and they're going after people. Hide. And they did hide. And so this is after all the security precautions, and Israel still got to him. And according to this, story, I think, according to the story, there's a widespread feeling of anxiety that Israel would not stop until all Iranian leaders are killed and the Islamic Republic falls. I hope that's true. Officials are calling each other. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to keep themselves safe. They don't know who's the next target. They don't know who to trust. Somebody's leaking information. This is exactly the kind of stuff that you need, that kind of this uncertainty, this distrust, this who's leaking, who's next, what's going to happen. This is exactly what you need in order to create the environment, in order to create the possibility of regime change, of an internal crumbling of the regime itself. And this is, if you will, what Israel is achieving. Now, to bolster this, the Israelis are actually calling up some of these IRGC commanders and, and kind of egging them on. This is from the Wall Street Journal. According to Wall Street Journal, Israeli intelligence officials began placing calls to individual commanders, threatening them and their families by name if they didn't stand aside in the event of an uprising, according to people familiar with the matter. The journal reviewed the context of one call between a senior Iranian police commander and an agent of the Mossad. "Can you hear me?" a Mossad agent can be heard speaking in Farsi. "We know everything about you. You are on our blacklist, and we have all the information about you." "Okay," the commander said in the recording. "I call to warn you in advance that you should stand with your people's side. And if you will not do that, your destiny will be as your leader. Do you hear me?" "Brother, I swear on the Quran, I'm not your enemy," the commander said. "I'm a dead man already. Please, just please, come help us." So this, he's pretending to be, I guess one of the opposition who wants help, who wants to get out of there. Article continues. Documents reviewed by the journal show that the strikes targeting everything from Thalara, the Revolutionary Guard unit responsible for protecting the capital, down to neighborhood police stations in Tehran. Israel aimed for sites where Israeli intelligence had determined the regime personnel were present. The targets then broadened. Israeli intelligence learned that Iran had a fallback plan for its internal security forces in the event their facilities were destroyed, mustering at local sports complexes. Israel watched the sites fill up and then hit them before the end of the first week. Those strikes, according to battle damage assessments seen by the journal, were among the deadliest of the war, killing hundreds of members of the security services and the military, the vast majority at Azadi Stadium, a large venue for soccer games. I mean, you got to be amazed at the quality of the intelligence and the willingness of Israel to follow through and execute and just eliminate these people, right? I mean, the only more radical thing that they could have done is like take Ali Khamenei's wedding or the event the other day, the Jerusalem Day, where masses of people came out into the streets and senior leadership was among them, bombing that. But you can only imagine the world's response to that. People would have freaked out completely at bombing mass gatherings. Now remember, these mass gatherings of regime supporters, the people who make the regime possible. So I don't expect Israel to do that. It would be nice, but I don't expect them to do that. But the fact that they're willing to follow these people around, kill them wherever they are, kill large numbers of them, and kill them while technically, right, the defenseless against Israel. Israel just controls the sky, shoots at anything they want to shoot at. Is pretty amazing. Did I say wedding? I meant funeral. Did I say wedding? There you go. Antihistamines again. I meant funeral. That was the latest assassination. I expect there'll be others as the war goes on, and I don't expect it to end in the next few days. Maybe the next few weeks, but not in the next few days. Let's see. In addition, this morning, Israel struck onshore processing facilities for natural gas in the Asaluya zone. This is the main natural gas field in Iran, and really, I think maybe the biggest in the world, because part of it sits in Iran, and part of it sits underneath the Gulf, and follows into the UAE. So the field is connected. It's a massive field. It comprises 70% of Iran's natural gas. Israel hit the processing facility in the field itself. This is how Iran gets its money by selling energy, whether natural gas or oil. It's the first time really that Israel or the United States have hit the economic, heart of the Iranian regime. They've hit something that is at the essential for the economy of the regime. That is the petrochemical plants, both oil and natural gas. It's signaling to the Iranians, we can go after economic targets. We can destroy your lifeline. Now, this attack was cleared with the Americans, as far as we know, right? Reports are it was cleared with the Americans. I mean, it'd be surprising, I guess, if we hear later today or tomorrow that the Americans say, oh, you shouldn't have done that, Israel. And then maybe they will just to protect themselves. But now, this is a big deal, of course, because the Iranians are really pissed off and now saying that now that they'll definitely close the Hormuz Straits, and now they're going to attack all the Gulf states. They're going to attack their oil and natural gas facilities. Everything's on the table. But Israel's purpose here, and I think backed by the United States, is to tell the Iranians the opposite of that. It's basically to tell the Iranians, look, you can close the Hormuz Strait. You can do a lot of damage to the U.S. economy and the global economy. And we will basically bomb you into the Middle Ages, right? We will take away your entire economic lifeline. We will make it impossible for you to have any revenue in the foreseeable future. We will destroy your economic and your economic capabilities. You will not be able to rebuild your army, and you will have no economy. You're struggling already. Your people are poor already. You have inflation already. There's not enough water already. Your economy is in shambles already. We can really make it shambles. We can really devastate it. And the idea is keep the Hormuz Straits open or else. So the whole purpose of this was to signal to Iran, if it continues disrupting oil supply through the Straits of Hormuz, there's going to be escalation, and Israel and the United States are going to target the energy facilities and basically destroy the Iranian economy. Whether it works, again, remember, this is a regime that is suicidal. It's a regime that is clearly suicidal. So who knows? They might say, go ahead and bomb us to oblivion. Now, the attacks of the Iranians on Gulf state oil facilities that already have happened. And in addition to that, the fact that the Hormuz Straits are closed is really pissing off the Gulf states. Kuwait, even Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Oman, maybe. Because, they're basically saying, look, and they're saying this to the Americans, if you leave this regime alive and well, if you withdraw at this point without opening the Hormuz Straits, they will keep using this as a weapon against all of us. And indeed, what's happened is that the Gulf states now want the United States to make sure there's either regime change or Iran is completely crippled economically if they're going to end the war. Here's Sultan Al-Jaber, the UAE Minister of Industry. Quote, any long-term political settlement must address the full spectrum of threats, including Iran's nuclear program, ballistic missiles capabilities, and the network of regional proxies. Let me make it very clear. Since the Iranian attacks have started on Qatar, the threat and attacks on civilian targets have not stopped. That was actually the Qatar's prime minister. He says, by taking Hormuz hostage, Iran is committing global economic warfare. This is a global economic issue. It is not a regional problem. The disruption is going to increase inflation. It will slow economies. It will affect everyday lives. Families will end up paying more for food. Notice how they are blaming Iran. They're not blaming the West. They're not blaming Israel. They're not, traditionally, they would have blamed Israel for all their problems and for the global problems. They would have blamed the United States. But here they're clearly blaming Iran. If nothing else, that's a huge shift in the Middle East. A professor at Doha University for Graduate Studies in Qatar, again, says leaving Iran in control of the Straits of Hormuz once the gun falls silent would be a disappointment for all the Gulf states. Once the conflict concludes, he says, quote, we will be in a position to quickly turn around and ramp up production to go back and reach our capacities. The brutal Iranian aggression will not break us. But victory is essential, and indeed, more and more reports are coming out that Trump, one of the reasons Trump is staying on this and not doing what he often does, which is retreat, change his mind, rein it in, is because the Gulf states, who I think he respects and listens to, are all telling him, you have to finish this. You have to finish this regime. You have to go all the way. We'll see if that happens. But having the Gulf states on the Israeli side, who also are constantly saying, we have to go the whole way, is a big, big, big plus. So this is good. Again, I expect this to continue for another couple of weeks. Can't tell exactly how long it'll take, but really it depends on how the United States and when the United States really solves the issue of the Straits of Hormuz. One step in that direction finally happened this morning. I think it's this morning. And that is, yes, this morning. And that is that, or maybe it was, I think late yesterday. And that is that the United States started bombing. I mean, using big bombs, 5,000-pound bombs, not the 35,000, mother of all whatever, but 5,000 bunker-busting bombs. They started dropping 5,000-pound bombs on Iranian missile sites. These are not the ballistic missile sites. These are the anti-ship missile sites. So they are now bombing along the coast of the Persian Gulf. They're bombing sites that they know hold the anti-ship weapons that the Iranians have. And they're using 5,000-pound bombs because these are all in bunkers in Iran along the coast. So the United States last night, attacked these 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions. This was dropped on hardened Iranian missile sites on the coastline near the Straits of Hormuz with the idea of clearing the threat of land to sea missiles from obstructing traffic and damaging ships, and primarily now damaging the warships that are going to escort the commercial ships out of there. The missiles are all underground, where the missiles are stored, drones are stored, small boats are stored underground, and the United States is now trying at least to systematically destroy those. So good step. I mean, this goes back to my recommendation, which it seems like the administration has picked up on, which is basically to bomb that coastline into oblivion, to destroy everything along that coastline that could be used against ships, to make it not impossible because, but to diminish the capabilities of disrupting shipping as much as possible, and then start an escorting strategy. And while it's true that the Czech and the Austrian navies are not coming to the rescue, it does seem like Europe maybe is going to change its mind and support this effort. I mean, they have to think this through, right? I mean, if the Europeans say this is not our war, Trump is very predictably going to say, and maybe has already said, Ukraine isn't our war either. I think strategically, it makes complete sense for the Europeans to engage in defensive activities, defending shipping lanes, defending the Straits of Hormuz at the American request. I think they'd make a huge mistake if they don't do that. I think ultimately they're going to come around. I think the French supposedly already committed to doing it. I think the Brits and others who actually have navies, not the ones who don't have navies, the ones who have navies, will ultimately send ships to help with this. And as I said before, I think the Japanese are interested. India's already doing it. They already have boats in the Gulf and escorting ships out. And I think you might see other countries as well. And then, of course, the United States. United States will enter with its own ships. Is also. Kurababa says the Czech Republic is landlocked. I'm confused. Yes, you're right. I was kidding. I was kidding because I made that mistake yesterday. Czech Republic is landlocked. Austria is landlocked. They don't have a navy. So, but the countries that do have navies, I think, will ultimately send over and help. And then if you look at just a few minutes ago, really, about 2 hours ago, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says that allies are quickly finding a way to secure the Straits of Hormuz. This is a quote from him. I have been in contact with many allies. Straits have to open. Allies are discussing how to do that. They're working to find a way forward. So I think you'll see. That NATO countries will ultimately send troops. I think Rutte has a decent relationship with Trump, and also as the commander of NATO, Secretary General of NATO, has kind of a broader perspective. He knows what it means to piss off Trump, and given the Europeans still want Trump support over Ukraine, I think they're going to step forward here. But we'll see. I'm not convinced, but we will see. In the meantime, again, I read conflicting stories. I don't know. It really is hard to get objective information about what exactly is going on in the Straits of Hormuz, to what extent traffic is blocked. But this latest post I saw, and I've seen some corroboration of this, but again, hard to confirm, hard to find objective information about this. But supposedly the traffic going through the Straits of Hormuz is increasing. Now, this is before the Israelis struck the gas facility, so I don't know what happens then. But the fact is that it's now at 25% of the pre-war level, and supposedly increasing. If you look at oil prices before Israel struck the gas facilities, they had come down to about 91, and 91 is still significantly higher than it was before the war, but still far away from the $150, $200 a barrel that people talked about. And even after the strike, gas is now, crude oil is now at $97 a barrel, so it went up almost 10% with the news that Israel has struck the gas facility. But there's no panic in the market. The market is not saying, we're expecting this to stay closed forever, and gas prices, oil prices, are going to be at 150. Enough is flowing out of the Straits of Hormuz. Saudi Arabia, as I told you, has shifted oil to its west coast. I read today that Iraq has restarted pumping oil through a gas line that takes the oil from South Iraq all the way through Turkey, to a port in Turkey. It's more expensive for the Iraqis to sell oil that way, but it means they can get a certain percentage of the oil they would normally ship out, get the revenue, but also supply the world with oil markets. UAE has a pipeline that goes around the Straits of Hormuz. And I think if you add all up together, it's still, in the constriction of the Straits, it's still a problem for world markets, but a problem at 97 or $91 a barrel. Not yet a problem at $150 a barrel, which is what everybody's panicking about. 150 would be a real disaster for the global economy. So it hasn't reached that level. It seems like Iran is going to allow movement of what they call friendly tankers. It's also true that, Russia is at full capacity, trying to get as much oil out there and selling it because Trump has eliminated the tariffs or temporarily lifted the tariffs. They're trying to get as much oil sold while the tariffs have been lifted so they can generate as much revenue as they can, because Russia is in deep, deep, deep trouble financially. So, maybe this oil catastrophe is not going to be such a catastrophe as everybody claims it is. It is worth noting that it's not just oil that is the problem. We talked about this. Fertilizer it's a huge problem for fertilizer. Fertilizer prices are rising dramatically. It's also the case that this affects, of all things, chip production, semiconductor production. It turns out the semiconductor production relies on helium. Helium is a byproduct of natural gas processing. The Qataris produce about a third of the global helium supply. Well, that has gone down a lot, to zero, because Qatar says they've shut down their natural gas facility for now. As a result, helium prices have gone up more than 100% since the Iran war began. So there's some prices out there, while oil has gone up around 50%, helium has gone up 100%. There are, it appears, lots of kind of consequences to the closing of the Hormuz Straits and the UAE shutting of its was it Qatar or the UAE that shut down Qatar shutting down their natural gas facility. We will see how long that happens. Now, the world has a inventory of about 45 days of helium. So if the war ends within 45 days, nothing really will happen. But for now, prices are through the roof. Helium is essential for semiconductor manufacturing, MRI machines, fiber optics, space exploration, and there is no viable substitution. Another way in which your life is so dependent on fossil fuels, just more ammunition for Alex Epstein's theory, Alex Epstein's book, Alex Epstein's advocacy around fossil fuels. We cannot survive. We cannot survive without fossil fuels. Oh, somebody mentions that helium is needed for, Jennifer says, for balloons, for making funny voices. Helium is necessary to make that squeaky, funny voice when you inhale it. So I don't know how the world will survive without funny voice balloons. All right. Supposedly Samsung and South Koreans and as well as the Taiwanese, all TSMC, are looking for alternative sources. South Korea gets 64% of its helium from Qatar, so they're looking for other places that might process natural gas, LNG facilities to get it. I wonder if the U.S. produces helium as a byproduct of their LNG facilities. I just don't know, but maybe they could ramp up. Maybe the United States could ramp up production. Finally, but one other. The Marines are on their way. So somewhere between 2,500 and 5,000, 2,500, we know, Marines on their way right now to the combat zone. The USS Tripoli amphibious group just passed through the Malacca Straits, and it's on the way to the Iranian arena. The Tripoli is a light aircraft carrier It has 20 vertical takeoff aircraft, helicopters, large landing ships, and as part of its entourage, large landing ships, a destroyer, and it has with it 2,500 Marines. Now, this amphibious group could be the group that will be responsible for the taking of Karag Island. We've talked about the island which is used for 90+% of all the Iranian exports of oil and I think natural gas. It could, and of course the United States has already bombed the island and taking out its military facilities. This amphibious marine group could be there to basically provide boots on the ground on the island, with the idea that the Americans take the island, use that to force the Iranians to open up the straits. Right? You want your island back, you want your oil to flow, open up the straits. All right, just a few more things about the war. More and more reports are coming out, and they seem to be more and more credible, that Russia is providing significant intelligence reports, support to the Iranians. This is not surprising at all. I don't know why people seem to be shocked about this. The Russians are providing them with satellite imaging, targeting intel, and even some upgraded drone tech. The Russians got the original drone tech from the Iranians, and I think that they've improved on the drones, and they're sending it back. The data supposedly includes data on U.S. military positions across the region, and that's why, to the extent that the Iranians are being successful in targeting U.S. facilities, a lot of it is due to intelligence they're getting from the Russians. Now, this next story is again fog of war, hard to tell, impossible to verify, at least for now. But this is video of supposedly in Iran of a car driving by a Basij-like roadblock, and the passenger in the passenger seat taking out a semi-automatic weapon and basically mowing down the Basij guards while driving and continuing to drive off. And supposedly there are more and more reports of these kind of drive-by shooting attacks against the Basij militia checkpoints in Iran. Now, this is great news if it is true. Now, it's not clear, are these Iranians that have maybe been armed by the Israelis, or maybe have weapons anyway, or maybe been armed by the Kurds or whoever, the CIA? Or is this Mossad? I think it's unlikely to be the Mossad, but maybe it's the Mossad. But it really, it does seem like the Iranians are armed, or there are weapons in the streets, and that at least somebody is standing up to the repressive forces of the regime, not just in the air, but on the ground. Reports also indicate that more and more of the Basij militia members are just refusing to go to work, and refusing to show up. This is also this is also related to the fact that they're not getting paid because Israel bombed the data center of the bank that provided them with checks, and they haven't got that up and going yet, and so most of the military in Iran is just not getting paid. All right, so that's kind of what's happening on the ground. A few more related stories that the kind of ongoing that we've discussed before, but worth highlighting again. It just stuns me the amount of negativity there is out there again about the war, and among Americans, among American intellectuals. There's another guy. You remember we talked about Meishmeyer, something like that. Milshmeyer. Anyway, that guy, the guy's horrible in Ukraine and just awful in Israel and Iran, just clueless. And he is a University of Chicago professor, political science, and very well known, Milshmeyer, and how completely wrong and immoral and dishonest he is. He was dishonest about Ukraine and wrong about Ukraine and just a Putin puppet on Ukraine, and now he's Yeah, Mersheimer. Okay, Mersheimer. I got close enough. You all knew who I meant. Mersheimer, or Mushhead, as Jennifer says. Mushhead, I like that. Mushhead. Anyway, there's another guy, Robert Pape, P-A-P-E. And shockingly, he's also a professor of political science at the University of Chicago. I wonder if Mersheimer hired this guy. I don't know, or he hired Mersheimer. But they're both there, and they're both losers. This guy specializes in security affairs. He's the founding director of the Chicago Project on Security and Threats. Sounds impressive. He writes, Iran is not losing, it's gaining power. Since February 28th, Iran has exported over 10 million barrels of oil, earning 1 billion or more, as price of oil has soared and shockwaves hit the region and Western economies. So, this is a guy who, again, Iran is winning somehow because oil prices have gone up. Remember, the Iranian regime is devastated. They've lost many of their leaders. They lost all their warplanes, all their missile launchers. They're losing their nuclear facilities slowly. They've lost their weapons arsenals. They've lost over 100 boats of their navy. They have no navy to speak of anymore. They've lost the capacity to produce drones and missiles. They've lost hundreds, if not thousands, of drones. The entire regime is on the verge of collapse. The economy's in tatters, and okay, they made money on the oil, but what are they going to do with that money? They're completely under siege, and they're completely incapacitated. Yet, a professor at the University of Chicago, a university I used to have a huge amount of respect for, and yet now I have two political scientists who are ignorant, stupid, immoral, all of the above. Pretty stunning. Of course, there were also all these reports that there was a deal on the table, and basically Iran was willing to do everything that Trump wanted. And what was the point of the diplomacy? It was just a facade. And of course, Iran didn't want to do everything the United States wanted. It wasn't willing to disable its ballistic missiles. It wasn't willing to stop funding Hezbollah and the Houthis and the rest. And it wasn't even willing to hand over the uranium. So, but the story is among both left-wing, and this is all coming from left and right. Far left, far right, all agree of the immorality and the wrongness of this war, and of course, this is a story that basically Israel has dragged the United States into this war. This war is completely Israel's fault. We'll get to that in a minute, but one more. And this is Timothy Snyder, who is a professor at University of Texas, I guess. I remember him as a professor at Yale, but I guess he's emeritus professor at Yale. He's very good in Ukraine. He's written a lot of really, really good books. Very, very knowledgeable. And yes, on this, he is completely, here's what he wrote. He says, he took the greatest military force in world history, lost the war to a middle power in a week, begging the world to save him, and demanded that the media lie about this and everything else. So he's basically saying Trump has lost this war and begging the rest of the world to save him. And the middle power is Iran, is winning. What world is he in? What is he looking at? There's absolutely no question that Iran is lost. Now, you can argue America hasn't won, but you can't say Iran won. You can't say he lost to Iran. If anything, the only way Trump can lose this is to lose his own short-sightedness and impatience. But Iran, he lost to Iran. Has Timothy Snyder seen what's going on? The complete and utter dominance that Israel and the United States have over Iran, the fact that the Iranians can't do anything. They've killed maybe a little over a dozen people in Israel. because they send these missiles blind to massively dense population centers, killing civilians on purpose, that gets no condemnation. The fact that the Iranians are bombing residential towers in Bahrain and UAE, and of course Israel, nobody condemns them, right? It's all America and Israel's fault, and of course it's all a sign that the Iranians are winning somehow. Now, this idea that it's all Israel's fault and Israel dragged the United States into the war it's not a new idea. I mean, this is the kind of anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli rhetoric that's existed for decades. For example, in the 1960s, the Weather Underground on the far left described Israel as a Nazi state and a racist atrocity. The Ku Klux Klan wizard, David Duke, on the far right, accused the Zionists of controlling the U.S. government. He literally said they control it lock, stock, and barrel. And the idea that Jews manipulate American leaders into going to war is been around for a century. Henry Ford blamed the outbreak of World War I on German Jewish bankers. And before America entered World War II, Charles Lindbergh, associated with the American right, singled out the Jews for, quote, pressing the country towards war. That didn't determine policy. Now, everybody blamed the Israel and the Jews and the neocon Jews, a lot of the neocons were Jews, for the Afghan war and for the Iraq war. You know, Professor Stephen Walt said, virtually all neoconservatives are also deeply committed Zionists who believe that the United States should use its military power to promote Israel's interest. It is no accident that in 1998, the neoconservatives started pushing for war against Iraq, not against Afghanistan or North Korea. So it just continues. It's always Jewish complicity. It's always the Jews. It's always Israel manipulating. American presidents are completely unable to say no. Now, all the examples of, which I've given in past shows, all the examples of where the United States and United States presidents have hampered the ability of Israel to defend itself, hampered the ability of Israel to win, hampered even, to some extent, the existence of the state of Israel. That all goes ignored. That doesn't count. According to Tucker Carlson, Candace Owen, and many on the far right and the far left, Israel is behind every calamity. Every calamity. And Israel, AIPAC, and Israel hold the American government, left or right, Democrats or Republicans, they control it completely. They control it completely. You know, that didn't prevent the United States from having an arms embargo on Israel from 1948 until 1967, almost 67, early 60s. They allowed some arms sales, very little, to Israel. It didn't stop them from stopping the Israelis in 1973 from finishing off the Egyptian Third Army or from moving forward towards Cairo and Damascus. It didn't stop it didn't stop the Americans from stopping Israel from killing Yasser Arafat in 1982 when he got a guarantee of safety from Ronald Reagan and prevented Israel from occupying West Beirut. On and on, killing Yasser Arafat in the early 2000s during the Second Intifada. Twice, Arik Sharon, who was Prime Minister of Israel at the time, was on the verge of killing Arafat, and George Bush told him not to. It didn't stop the United States from imposing its will in Israel to allow Hamas to run in the elections in the Palestinian Authority in the mid-2000s, thus guaranteeing Hamas victory and control over the Gaza Strip. Now, I mean, the United States and Israel, most of the time, the United States is reining Israel in. Most of the time, the United States is acting in opposition to Israeli interests an Israeli wants, particularly when it comes to blowing, to actually, defeating their enemies thoroughly. And even in Gaza, one could argue the ceasefire and ceasefire deals were not in Israel's interest. Israel's interest was the complete occupation of Gaza Strip and the annihilation of Hamas. So no, the United States is not in Israel's pocket, in spite of all these claims. But they ignore reality. People easily, freely ignore reality and perpetuate lies. And don't forget, Israel wanted to continue the 12-day war, and Trump stopped them. All right, that is basically the news from Iran for today. I'm sure there'll be more tomorrow. We'll see. But that is basically... Trump is literally Jewish, though? Really? How's Trump Jewish? God, that's bizarre. He's got a Jewish son-in-law. That's about as Jewish as he is. All right, so we will go on to other news. Give me less than a minute. All right, one of the consequences of rising oil prices in the 90s is Trump is looking for ways to lower those prices while the Straits of Hormuz are blocked, or at least partially blocked. And, they're releasing oil from the Strategic Reserve, and they're trying to find other ways to deal with rising oil prices. One of the ways in which they're trying to deal with rising oil prices is it happened today when Trump issued a 60-day waiver of the Jones Act, a temporary suspension of the Jones Act, which is pretty amazing. It's an interesting admission by the administration. They're doing away with the Jones Act actually will reduce prices. We all know that. But the Jones Act, one of the more destructive regulations on the book from 1920, requires the transportation of goods between any two U.S. ports be conducted by U.S. flagged, U.S. manned, U.S. built vessels. There are very few of those, so very little transports between American ports and at high prices because there are very few boats, so there's very little competition. In particular, when you look at things like natural gas, oil, fertilizer, coal, there are very few boats that can do that. There's only one LNG boat that is, I think one, maybe zero, that is actually Jones Act approved. What this will allow is any foreign vessel to come and transport stuff between Boston and Maryland and Baltimore. They have a harbor in Baltimore. They have an LNG, I think, terminal in Baltimore. They have LNG terminals in Houston where they can transport, or in Texas where they can transport oil to the Northeast or natural gas, sorry, not oil, natural gas to the Northeast. California doesn't now have to buy its oil from the Bahamas, who got it from Texas, all in order to go around the Jones Act. They can just buy directly from Texas. A ship can leave Texas, go through the Panama Canal, and show up in California. So all these goods will flow a lot freer. Now that has a huge impact on Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico can only use Jones Act ships to get stuff from America, which means the stuff coming in from America, from the U.S., is expensive. And a lot of stuff just doesn't come because it's too expensive to ship it. The law was passed just after World War I. It was intended to grow the domestic shipping industry. The shipping industry has only shrunk since then. This is one of the stupidest, dumbest, most obviously harmful, straightforward regulations that just like that could be eliminated with no real consequences because there's so few Jones Act ships anyway, and the shipbuilding industry in the United States is almost non-existent. And yet no president will do this, not a Democrat, not a Republican, and it's bewildering. They all use national security as the excuse, but there is no national security issue because the fact is, with the Jones Act, the shipping industry is basically gone to close to zero. So it's going to be interesting to see if this has an effect on oil prices. It'll be interesting to see what kind of effect this has on other prices. You would hope, but it's unlikely, that once they see that repealing or doing away with the Jones Act for 60 days actually works to lower prices, increase efficiency, reduce the number of trucks in the I-95, and a lot of other good things, that maybe it would be repealed completely. That would be pretty damn amazing. But very unlikely that will happen. But I'll take the 60 days, better than nothing. All right, this is a pretty, horrifying story, I guess, about Cesar Chavez. I don't know how much you guys know about Cesar Chavez, but he is a civil rights and labor icon. He basically organized farm workers in California originally, the United Farm Workers Union, which became a national union. He co-founded it, he fought for workers' rights and minimum wages and for farm laborers, and became a massive hero for both the Latino community as well as just the left more broadly, and the labor movement and everything. And I don't know, there are over 100 cities around the United States that have Cesar Chavez roads. Many roads around the country are named after him. There are, in California, there's a Cesar Chavez official state holiday named after him. And there are festivals or festivities in a number of different states around the country. Cesar Chavez Day, again, is a state holiday on March 31st. Literally, the legislature, state, county, and city offices are closed. There's a march. There's an annual Cesar March in Sacramento, but also in other places all around the country. There's a Cesar Chavez Foundation, which works for, again, farm workers, quote, rights, and so on. Anyway, this guy is huge, looked up to, worshipped by the left. Obama and everybody for decades have heaped praise on him, given him awards, medals, lavished him with praise. Now he died. He died in 1993 at the age of 66. But even after his death, he's been showered with accolades and compliments, and again awards and all of this, and considered a real hero of both workers and the Latin community in the United States. Today, the New York Times broke a story in today's New York Times, and this is, by the way, this is the kind of journalism that it's rare to get outside the mainstream media, because these guys have actual reporters that actually go and investigate and do this stuff. There's not a lot of this other than that. Anyway, today they broke a story that basically shows that Cesar Chavez was abusing young girls as young as 12 and 13, sexually abusing them, that he committed rape on a 15-year-old, committed rape on a woman with whom he co-founded the workers' union, he raped her when she was 36, but committed rape. These women, the young girls, at least two of them have come forward and extensively interviewed by the New York Times, and their story is verified. They're now in their 60s. So this happened in the 1960s and 1970s. It seems to be that there was a wide pattern of sexual misconduct by Mr. Chavez for years, and that many women stayed silent for decades because of, women often internalize the sexual abuse as guilt and stay silent because of a sense of shame, which is tragic because it's not their fault. It's the fault of the abuser, clearly. But it's a reality psychologically. Many women internalize this, the abuse, and take and view it. One was statutory rape, the other was actual rape, right? Rape of a 36-year-old. So physical force. But, what these girls describe is real grooming. But anyway, the women stayed silent because of shame, but also because of fear of tarnishing the image of a man. This is out of the New York Times. A fear of tarnishing the image of a man who became the face of Latino civil rights movement. His image on school murals and his birthday estate holiday in California. Again, this is not Hugo Chavez. This is Cesar Chavez. This is kind of as a consequence of these allegations, festivals are being canceled. There is going to be pressure to do away with a holiday after his name. Many of the events are being canceled. A lot of people are distancing themselves from this. The woman who, together with Mr. Chavez, created the United Farm Workers, the co-founder, who was raped, has now come out and talked about the rape and discussed it. But many of his old colleagues are distancing themselves, condemning him, and trying to, most of them in shock. He's been this hero, and it's going to be interesting to see what the response is. So far, the response has not been to try to deny any of this. So far, by pretty much everybody, has been to condemn him, to condemn his actions, and to start moving away from the kind of veneration that both the Latino community and the workers' unions have had for him. He clearly, groomed these young girls, starting at age 12, to the point where he could have sex with them at age 15. He manipulated them. Ms. Rojas, one of his victims, said, "I had love for him. He did his grooming very well. He should get an Academy Award for all he did." You can find the story that covers all this in the New York Times today. It's being covered across the board by Politico, by the New York Post, in addition to the Times. But the basic reporting was done by the Times. Everybody, Bill Clinton, Obama, Biden, everybody celebrated him. Literally, there was a bust of Cesar Chavez in the White House during the Biden administration as part of that celebration. So, an icon of the left. And really, this is the bigger phenomena here is, I think, sadly, if you combine this with what we've learned from Jeffrey Epstein, is, the fact that, powerful men in positions of power have, through the decades, used that power, used their position to abuse women. And this is the context in which one should understand the women's movement, if you will, over the last few decades. This is not isolated. This is not one of a kind. There's a pattern here of abusing women, of grooming young girls, of sexual manipulation, of rape that goes undetected and unspecified. And it's I think, whether it's cult leaders, whether it's politicians, Bill Clinton comes to mind, or whether it's people on the left or people on the right, or just wealthy individuals. power can go to people's heads. Power can go to people's heads. And so something to remember. And this is, and there's something to remember and something to kind of to put into context for a lot of the way women respond to what is going on in the world. I think the Me Too, while I think Me Too went too far, and the idea that women should always be believed is going way too far. This is in the context of abuse, of lots of abuse. Of men in power. What was that movie producer, the famous movie producer, who, who molested and sometimes raped and clearly used the power he had to gain sexual favors from the women whose careers he had in his hand. Now you could say they did it; it was voluntary, sure. But you could still judge him as a sleazebag, as a scum, as a horrible human being. Weinstein. Truly horrible, truly despicable behavior. And again, across what unites the man who typically accused of this is power. And it goes to their heads. All right, now for something completely different. Robots. We're getting to the point where humanoid robots are making massive advances. Massive advances, and in particular, Chinese robot manufacturers making huge advances and really leaps and bounds ahead of the competition. Unitree Robotics, a Chinese company, creating these humanoid robots, and it looks like they will dominate the space. They're making them better than anybody else. It appears that Chinese robotics manufacturers are ahead of the United States American robotics manufacturers, even though American companies like Boston Dynamics have been working on robots for decades. China has just advanced, and this is alarming a lot of people. Who is it alarming in particular? Well, in particular, it's alarming Boston Dynamics and another company called Scale AI. These are companies in the United States who are being outcompeted, who are not keeping up. Of course, the combination of robotics plus AI scares a lot of people, but it also has, Boston Dynamics and Scale AI, it also has national security consequences. Of course, whenever your competitors do something better than you, one way to get them regulated is to claim national security. And that's exactly what is going on today. There was I guess yesterday, there was a hearing by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection Subcommittee of the House Committee on Homeland Security. Whew. They have subcommittees of committees of subcommittees, whatever. The idea is, how do we come up with strategies, policies to counter Chinese firms' dominance? So basically, the industry is asking for either subsidies or regulations or trade restrictions to allow them to catch up, which is horrible, and exactly the kind of policies that are incredibly destructive. Instead of trusting the ability of competitive markets and American ingenuity and the brain power of Americans and the immigrants we attract, less and less so, I guess, these days, to catch up with the Chinese and beat them, and ultimately beat them as we do in almost everything, and certainly everything that has the potential for national security, we are just succumbing to, oh, no, we can't beat them, therefore let's subsidize, please, get government involved, and let's stop them, and it really, really, really is sad and pathetic, and this is This is where American businessmen are groveling before government for help instead of being out there and competing. Interestingly, Tesla, which is also building humanoid robots, I don't know if Tesla was at the hearing. I didn't see them mentioned. They seem to believe that they have a competitive product with the Chinese. But, you know, let's have competition. Chinese are doing this. If the Chinese are as controlled by government and regulated by government, it would be very hard for them to compete. Now, it's true, China is the world leader in electric cars, but that's partially because electric cars don't yet make economic sense in the West and in the United States. And, you know, and it's cars. It's not a national security issue. Robots might be, but then you have to carve out the specific national security issue. And it's not clear you need humanoid robots in the battlefield. There's nothing particularly advantageous about looking human in the battlefield. You need unmanned vehicles who can traverse terrain, move super fast, and carrying massive firepower. Probably not humanoid. Maybe it turns out walking is better than, you know, driving. I don't know. BYDs cannot charge in 9 minutes yet. They claim they will be able to, but that has not been proved, and it's dubious from a physics perspective if they can actually do that. I mean, who has better EV, Tesla or BYD? Not obvious. Not obvious who's better. I think for most people, the Chinese have better EVs than Tesla. It could be that Tesla has better self-driving technology than the Chinese, but even that's not clear because we don't have access to that self-driving technology. It's right now just in China. So not clear if Tesla's better than BYD or any other, or many of the other Chinese electric vehicles. They partially because we don't have them, and so we can't do a direct comparison. Other people are doing it in Europe and choosing the Chinese. And there's real competition in China, right? So the cars are improving at a massive rate, massive rate. All right, let's see. Yes, mRNA. We all know mRNA from the COVID vaccines, and people are freaking out, and we know the HHS has basically banned work on kind of immunology vaccines using mRNA. The HHS will not support that. But the reality is that one of the most promising areas of mRNA is, I mean, it's incredibly promising for influenza-like diseases, for these viruses that could take a huge toll on us. COVID-like viruses that might be even more deadly or significantly more deadly. And the fact that we've killed that line of research in America is just like putting a bullet through your brain. It's just insane and suicidal. But one of the other promising areas of mRNA vaccines is in cancer. And there's massive evidence that mRNA vaccines can reverse and be used to treat cancer. They stimulate the body to fight the cancer by itself, and it's an immunotherapy that basically can eviscerate cancer by itself, right? And let's see. So there's plenty of evidence to suggest, even to the point where they can create an mRNA vaccine that is personalized for your DNA, for you, which is mind-boggling and amazing and stunning. And anyway, there's now an effort to raise $200 million, which is going to be public and private, in a public-private partnership. So some of the money to come from the National Cancer Institute, which is under HHS, which is surprising because they've been so anti-mRNA, but it seems like even they have come around. So maybe $100 million from the National Cancer Institute and $100 million from private entities to engage in clinical trials of vaccines that spark an immune attack on cancer tumors. These vaccines, there's a good chance, can ward off cancer in patients who have been treated for the disease, but are high risk of recurrence. So this is kind of the final bang, the final layer to eradicate the cancer and make sure it doesn't come back. The National Cancer Institute director has said he wants to finance large trials of vaccines that have in small trials shown potential. And this is going to be crucial. So I think this is great news. While HHS terminated mRNA vaccine program under the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority for upper respiratory diseases like COVID, it is now embracing vaccines for the treatment of cancer, which is incredibly promising and potentially it can be a major tool in the fight against cancer. So this is in the good news category. A lot of what we talked about today is in the good news category. The Jones Act, the war in Iran. We will see. We will see how this goes. But it does look like we're going to get at least research into the mRNA cancer fighting abilities. Cancer vaccines will be paired with medications known as checkpoint inhibitors to make them more effective. The inhibitors have already been approved by the FDA. They've been around since 2018. They put it in, and they remove a brake on the immune system. So they, again, encourage the immune system to act. Anyway, this whole area of immunotherapies, which are therapies that guide or stimulate your own body to fight cancer instead of pumping chemicals into your body to fight the cancer, is incredibly promising, is already being used and already showing, maybe not with mRNA yet, but already showing incredible results. Adding mRNA to the toolkit is slowly, systematically going to erode, cancer's, how would you say it? Cancer's deadliness, and give doctors many, many more tools to be able to fight it and beat it. All right, finally, I don't know how many of you know about the Giving Pledge. The Giving Pledge is this pledge. It was initiated by Warren Buffett and Bill Gates years ago. And it was basically a pledge that billionaires made. It was the idea was to go to millionaires and have them pledge that they would give away a majority of their wealth to charity at the end of their life or during their life. An idea was to convince the world's richest people to commit over half of their money to nonprofit charity causes. And this was incredibly successful. Many billionaires signed up for the Giving Pledge. I think a lot of it had to do with getting, I think it's kind of a virtue signal, letting the world know that they were good altruists in a sense. They were willing to give their money away, that they were giving back, all the kind of altruistic symbolism involved in that. I know at least one billionaire who, in spite of, being an advocate of Ayn Rand's and Atlas Shrugged and all this stuff, ultimately wrote a pledge, and they wrote these letters pledging this money, and those are all on the website of the Giving Pledge thing. Anyway, we've got hundreds now of families that have pledged to give away more than 50% of their wealth to charity. And yet, over the last couple of years, this has gone kind of out of fashion. Many entrepreneurs are no longer considering embracing the giving pledge, and indeed some of them are backing out of the pledge they already made, with the idea that they don't want to be funding all kind of causes, that are going to be guided by, after they're dead, by people they don't know, or guided towards causes they don't believe in, and so on, right? And some of them even are saying, well, maybe investing my money or putting my money into profit-seeking activities, maybe that is more valuable than just giving it away. And you're seeing more and more billionaires rejecting the idea of a giving pledge and spending the money on R&D, maybe kind of university stuff, spending the money on elections, spending the money on things while they're alive that they're committed to, but that do not kind of qualify under kind of the charity that the giving pledge encouraged. And many of them just saying, I want to invest my money. I don't want to be locked into how much I'm giving. I don't want to be locked in to these kind of commitments. One of the people pushing against the giving pledge and advocating against it, and has been for a long time, is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel has been influenced by Ayn Rand, but is now a kind of a national conservative and politically, I think, pretty bad. But, still has maybe a little bit of the influence of Ayn Rand, is one of the big advocates against the giving pledge. Right now, he's calling it, part of it was you were supposed to, a lot of people pledged to give the money to the Gates Foundation. And, Peter Thiel's calling that, an Epstein Foundation because of Bill Gates' connection with Jeffrey Epstein. The Gates Foundation is struggling because of Bill Gates' connection to it. So, Peter Thiel has said, that he talks to billionaires. He says, most of the ones I've talked to have at least expressed regret about signing it. And there seems to be a real move away from this. There's a backlash right now against a lot of charitable giving. And there's a focus much more on investment. I mean, think about Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a signator to the Giving Pledge. He's committed to giving half of his wealth to charities. I mean, is that really what he wants to do? Is that what really he's passionate about? One could imagine he wanting to keep investing in, even after he dies, keep investing in the project of building Mars. Why would he want it to go to miscellaneous and nonprofits? So it's good. It's good to see a backlash. It's not principled and from a proper moral perspective. At least it's not articulated in the right self-interested moral terms. But at least it shows that there's a new young class of billionaires who are not as tempted by altruism, at least that we can see, as the previous generation, not as eager to just sign away their wealth. Now, the pledges are not legally binding, and nobody's really monitoring this to see if they actually give half away, but it is public. So there is, I assume, public pressure to do so. But there are a number of people who have walked away or signaled that they might not follow through with their pledge. All right, I think that too is good news. It's good news. Again, story in the New York Times, not a particularly well-written story, and doesn't go to the heart of it and doesn't really go to the core of it, but interesting. that it's being walked back, and at the forefront of it is Peter Thiel. All right, that is the news for today, Wednesday, March 18th. Thank you for being with us. I will turn now to our questions. I will remind you that the show is only made possible through the support that you guys provide. So couldn't do it without you. And but that means you have to support the show. We have a $250 goal for every hour that I do the show. That's to pay for my time and the research and the everything that goes into putting the show, including the editing and the thumbnails and all the work that goes into producing and marketing the show. And I appreciate the support you guys provide. Couldn't happen without you. As I said, we have $250 an hour. We're about 100 and what are we? Whoops. Wes just came in with $50 sticker. Changed my calculation. So we are $116 short of our 2-hour goal, which is $500. So $114 short of $116 short, sorry, of that goal. So please consider supporting the show. You can do it with a sticker, like Wes just did, for $50. Thank you, Wes. A few $50 and we're over. But 2s and 5s and 3s, all that up. Daniel, thank you for the sticker. Mike, thank you for the sticker. Let's see, who else did we have here? I'm pretty sure I saw Jonathan Honing up there. And Paul, thank you. And Mary Aline, thank you. And Eyal, thank you. So thank you guys for the stickers. Keep them coming. Let's see if we can chip away at this. Of course, you can ask a question. $20, $50, $2. You can ask a question, and that way you can shape the show. You can get me to talk about what you want me to talk about. I'll answer your questions. Right? Darlene, thank you, Darlene, for the sticker. And Daniel's 5th super chat ever. Thank you, Daniel, for the $50. And Tom for the 50 euro or pounds, I can't tell. And Nick, thank you. Wow, you guys are great. So we just made our second hour target. Starting to work on that 3rd hour now. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Wes. I think, Wes, you inspired with that $50 to get other people to do $50 and 50 pounds. Thank you, Tom. All right. Let's remind you of our sponsors. We'll take a short break here to talk about our sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute is holding a conference in Porto, Portugal, on I think it's April 18th. You can find information at aynrand.org/start here. You can get a discount. The discount code is 26YBS10, 26YBS10, which you should use. The conference is going to be a lot of fun. Me, Ankar, and Tal are the speakers, and there'll be 100 people there. A lot of young people, over 50 young people, maybe more. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you're in Europe, you should come over. If you're in the United States, it's a long way, but Porto is a beautiful city, and it's a great opportunity to visit Portugal. And you can drive from Porto to Lisbon, or you can drive out into the mountains, or you can drive up north to Galicia in Spain. There's just so much to do in that region, so much to see. It's a great opportunity to do a Europe trip and be at an Objectivist conference at the same time. Alex Epstein is the #1 authority in the world on all things energy, power, and a great guy. And you should follow him. You should follow him because you'll learn a lot. And he does these talking points where you get real guidance on how to communicate these really, really, really controversial ideas in ways that resonate with the people you're talking to. So check him out, alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com, where you can sign up for it. And All right, let's defendersofcapitalism.com. Defendersofcapitalism.com is a program that defends capitalism from political, economic, moral, deeper philosophical perspective. Just a complete course on capitalism and how to defend it. It's available at defendersofcapitalism.com. You can find information about it. Check it out. This is all a product of Michael Williams, who I've contributed some to it and worked with him on it, and it's being delivered at Leadership Program of the Rockies. All right. And finally, I just remind you, Patreon.com is a way to support the show on a monthly basis. Very predictable. It's great. I love it. It'll just take out of your credit card a particular amount every month. You can go from anywhere from $2 to any amount above that, all the way to $1,000 to $10. You get an ads-free version of the podcast. At $25, you get to participate by video on the AMA. $250, you get a one-on-one with me once a quarter. At $500, one-on-one with me once a month. And at beyond $500, you get in person. One-on-ones in person. So if you value any of that, sign up. All right, Stringer Bell, thank you for the sticker. All right, guys, let's jump in. We got two $50 questions, so we'll start with those. And then we'll go to $20 questions, and then we'll go to the questions of $2 to $10, and we'll cover those. All right, let's start with the rational IP. To what extent are toxic work environments a reflection of broader cultural values, where conformity, approval-seeking, and favoritism are rewarded over competence and passion, as embodied by characters like Peter Keating? Looking forward to Porto. Great. I'm glad you're coming, and it'll be good to see you. I mean, they're absolutely a reflection of the culture, if you will, and of the ideas in the culture, of the cultural values, as you say. And it's a reflection of the psychology also of the people who've been shaped by that culture, to be envious, to not be objective or rational in how they deal with other people. So we live in a culture that encourages envy, that encourages the idea that it's a zero-sum world and therefore there are conflicts between people. And that kind of culture is a culture that is going to result in the kind of toxic behaviors that you're talking about. It's very much a Peter Keating world. It's a second-handed world. It's, imagine working at a place where people are really all guided and fully integrated with the ideas of rational self-interest, of no conflict between rational man, of treating people based on their degree of rationality and competence. It would be a very, very different work environment. And it's very rare today to find places like that. And because I think the culture is so opposed to it that even when you try to do it, it's very difficult. It doesn't take many people within an organization to create a complete toxic environment culturally throughout the organization. So yes, it's very much the consequence of bad ideas in the culture are going to pollute the culture within an organization, any organization. And you have to fight against that. Silvanos, thank you, Silvanos, $50. Hey, Iran, thanks for ongoing updates on Iran. I see a division between objectivists on the Iran war. Care to comment on the possibility that it's pragmatic to support it when it had such dramatic impacts worldwide, as well as the legal consequences? I'm not sure why it's pragmatic to support it. I view it as principle to support it. If you believe in the principle of self-defense, if you believe in the principle that the enemies of the United States, active enemies of the United States, need to be destroyed, then it is a principled stance, which, by the way, I and Leonard Peikoff and the Ayn Rand Institute have been advocating for decades, not just at this war, but way before. It's a principled stand to take to, destroy the enemies of the United States, the people scheming and trying to destroy Americans. It's absolutely an act of self-defense. The Iranians have showed a willingness, an eagerness to kill Americans wherever they can. The only thing that has prevented them from killing more Americans and from attacking America's soil is their capabilities, but they were trying to fix that by working on ICBMs. This is an absolutely unequivocal war of self-defense, if there ever was one. This is a country that declared war in the United States on November 4th, 1979, by taking the American embassy. It's a country that killed 244 Marines in Beirut, bombed the American embassy in Beirut. This is a country that tortured and killed the CIA, what do you call it, chief of station in Beirut. This is a country responsible, or that helped the bombing of the Kobo Towers in Saudi Arabia, in which Americans died. This is a country that has pursued death to Americans wherever they could, wherever they thought they could get away with it. This is a country that funded terrorist organizations. Why did they take the embassy? They took the embassy because they're theocratic thugs and because they view America as the enemy. That's why they took the embassy. They're thugs and they're enemies. And America is their enemy, and they know that. Death to America every Friday is not an accident. So, this is a regime that is at war with America and has been since its founding in 1979. And as a consequence of that, they are at war with the United States. And you want to argue that the war was started in 1950-something because of something the CIA did, which is, generously, I would say, is bullshit. But even if you want to say that, it still doesn't change the fact that they're at war with the United States. We have to respond. You can't just sit back and lay down. And if you do, lay down, they will have nuclear weapons, and they will really be at war with the United States. Remember the ideology that is behind the Iranian regime. This is not a secular ideology, and they have secular complaints about America. This is a theocracy. This is a theocracy. Even if it's, by the way, even if it is America's fault because of some history, this is a war of self-defense. Because the reality is that America now could say, whoops, we're sorry, we'll sign a peace deal with you, we'll be nice to you, we'll send you money, we'll do all this stuff. And the Iranians will still build the bomb, still get an ICBM, and still want to kill as many Americans as they want. So what are you supposed to do? Hide in a bunker somewhere? Because some CIA operative way back, some American administration way back did something that the Iranians are offended by, unjustifiably offended by, but nevertheless offended by. So even if you take the most generous account of it's our fault, we created it all, it doesn't matter at this point. Now they're a theocracy committed to destroying America, and we won't redeem ourselves by committing suicide. The only way to redeem ourselves is to destroy this regime and allow Iran to have a secular government. And by the way, if Iran had a secular government, what is the first thing they would do? If they had a secular, I don't know, call it a liberal democracy, the first thing Iran would do is establish a relationship with Israel, reestablish a relationship with the United States, and have a friendly relationship with the United States. That tells you that the Iranian people don't think it's America's fault. So let's be very clear here. This is a war of self-defense that the American government had to engage in. Otherwise, it was setting itself up to be destroyed at some point. And of course, that doesn't even count the fact that, Israel, by the way, did nothing to Iran. Israel did nothing to the Iranians. No excuse to hate Israel. And yet, Iran funded, supported all of Israel's enemies, all of them. Hamas, October 7th, was with Iranian knowledge and training and technology. Hezbollah, which had 140,000 missiles before this war started, all supplied by the Iranians. I mean, on the part of Israel, it's just unequivocal that this is a war of self-defense. But both countries, this is an absolute act of self-defense. Now, would I have preferred that Trump go to Congress and get Congress's permission, authority to use force? Absolutely. That would have been the right constitutional thing to do. But the reality is that presidents have not done that now for decades. So this isn't some precedent that is going to lead to the rule of law going out the window. The rule of law is already out the window. It's not like in every realm of American governance, the Constitution is followed to the T. And then out of nowhere, Trump said, I'm ignoring the Constitution on this one thing. So if that were the case, yeah, it would have been horrible. But the reality is that the Constitution is ignored on a daily, minute-by-minute basis by the governing authorities of this country. Joe Kent is a MAGA idiot. Joe Kent, who just resigned, I talked about him yesterday, is an anti-Semitic MAGA fool who is friends with the demon-obsessed Tucker Carlson. So the fact that he was in the administration says a lot about the ways in which Donald Trump appointed people, which is horrific and irresponsible. He should have never been in government. He has no qualifications for the roles he had. So I'm glad he's gone. So you want to take Joe Kent's word over mine? Go for it. You'll get what you deserve in life, generally. I don't see a dramatic impact on the world. Oil prices at 91. They've been at 91 in the past. They've been at 95 in the past. Israel does not think Iran is Amalek. Israel is not killing civilians in Iran. Israel is not, destroying everything Iranian. You're another idiot who has no clue. Sorry. Israel wants to wipe out Iranians. I mean, quite the contrary. The Iranians have more respect for the Israeli flag than you do. The Iranians have more respect for Israel than you do. The Iranians will be Israel's friend to a greater extent than any other country in the Middle East. If this regime is toppled, certainly a liberal democracy in Iran will be massively friendly, amazingly friendly with the Israelis. They have much more in common with Israel than any of the Arab states do. The idea that Israel views them as Amalek is complete garbage. Southern Lebanon? Well, of course Israel should invade southern Lebanon. Again, this is an act of self-defense. The Hezbollah is launching rockets against Israel. Israel did nothing to Hezbollah, and they're launching missiles into Israel. Israel's has to go into Lebanon in order to protect itself. It is an absolutely unequivocal act of self-defense. Israel should occupy every piece of property up to the Litani River in Lebanon. And if Hezbollah can't be stopped then it should cross the Litani River and go further into Lebanon and do whatever is necessary to stop Hezbollah from firing rockets into Israel. Again, very simple, very easy. Somebody wants to kill you, you kill them first. And somebody's not just wants to kill you. Somebody is shooting at you. You go and stop them from shooting. You kill them. So Israel has the capacity to go all the way to Beirut. And if the circumstances are such that it needs to go to Beirut in order to win the war, then it needs to do that. But, it's a complete and utter act of self-defense. Israel, after October 7th, told Hezbollah not to get involved. Hezbollah chose to get involved. And since then, it has suffered the consequences. And I suggest that it's going to continue to suffer the consequences in quite a horrific way. But, only very, very, disturbed people would accuse Israel of anything to do with going after the Amalek, which is a biblical story. And but Iran is the Amalek. is bizarre. Jews, indeed, in the Old Testament, have a real soft heart for the Iranian people, for the Persian people, because there's the Persians that returned the Jews to the land of Israel after the Babylonians exiled them to Babylon. And it is the Persian King Cyrus who actually allowed the Jews to return to Israel and found the Second Kingdom. So Israel has and always have, Jews have had a real soft, positive feelings towards the Persian people, just on the basis of that history. And there's even, there's a holiday that we celebrate, celebrating Purim, which celebrates the decision by a Persian king not to kill all the Jews in his land. There's a lot of relations and contact and history between the Jewish people and the Iranian people, and to talk about them like that is just ignorant. Anyway, Silvanus, hopefully that answers your question, including the legal consequences, which are basically, I wish the Constitution was abided by in this case and in every other case that it's not. But would I rather have a war with Iran that is in violation of the Constitution, given the world in which we live, where the Constitution is violated by most of what the government does, or no war because there was no request to Congress? Wait until the Iranians develop a nuke and an ICBM and have it drop on the U.S. I'll take the strike first option any day, and that's not from the perspective of pragmatism. That is the perspective of self-defense. I'm not going to wait around and sit around for the people in Washington, D.C. to finally figure out there's a constitution, they have to abide by it. I want them to act to defend me, even when it means, even if I know that in acting to defend me, they will not follow the Constitution to the letter, as sad as that may be. Jamie, I feel you underestimate Americans' willingness to part with their guns and isn't promoting a Second Amendment, a safeguard, not certainty, but at least a barrier to some, not all, forms of authoritarianism rising to begin with. Look, what can I tell you? I'm skeptical that it's a barrier. That is, when the American people reach the point where they're willing to accept an authoritarian government, my point is that the Second Amendment at that point is not relevant. So you can argue for it today, but today it doesn't matter. And yes, it's true that some people, if there's an authoritarian government, might rebel against it and launch a war against the state. But the state has tanks and F-35s and big weapons, and I don't think your M16 is going to save you from the destructive effects of such a rebellion. So my view is, fine. I mean, keep your guns. That's okay. But that is not what's protecting us against authoritarianism. The only thing that can protect us against authoritarianism is our ideas. And instead of, focusing on guns and Second Amendment, I'd rather focus on liberty and freedom and individual rights and those kind of arguments, and hope that we can knock enough sense into Americans that we never get to the point where they have to use their guns to try to defend themselves against the state, because they'll most likely lose that battle. I mean, you're seeing what the American military is capable of right now. Right. Non-Chavez algorithm. Is the educated, productive center-left that be first significant segment of society to embrace objectivism? Have you been wasting our time on the right all along? Well, I don't know. I don't think anybody's wasted their time on the right, because I don't think we've been focused on the right. I think we've been focused on whoever's willing to think. And I don't think there's going to be a significant segment of society. There is no such thing. All there is individuals. And in what way am I appealing to the right or appealing to anyone? I'm putting my stuff out there. I talk to any group that will invite me, pretty much. And, one person at a time, one mind at a time. It's not a segment. It's one mind at a time. I mean, as I've said before, the best results I've ever got, and I've said this years and years ago, was when Dave Rubin was center left. That's when I get the most people subscribing, and I still get people who saw me back then, or from what's his name, the podcaster that I did, whose name eludes me now. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I've got it. A lot of the people who've come over to Ayn Rand, to Objectivism, or to the Yaron Brook Show have come from the center left, but some have come from the center right, some come from the far right, some have come from the far left. Nikos came from the far left. So you never know where somebody's going to come from. You put your content out there. You hustle to get in front of as many people as you can. You talk, write. Teach. And you hope that you've reached the minds that need to be reached. Yeah, we got some people in Destiny. No, I was thinking of, it'll come to me. Anyway, doesn't matter. Liam, why is hatred of self-interest so pathological and homicidal? Communist purges and the Nazi Holocaust were driven by this ferocious desire to stamp out selfishness in human nature. Well, because that is Lex Friedman. Yes, Lex Friedman was the name I was struggling with. Because that is Christianity. That is the dominant ideology of the last 2,000 years. That is collectivism. That is the idea that the individual doesn't matter. What matters is obedience, God, the community, God. So collectivism has been an incredibly powerful force in the world. And that incredibly powerful force has led people to do unbelievably horrific things. And why is it so ingrained? I think because of the power of religion, because the altruists and the religionists have dominated the world for such a long time. They're in every one of our institutions. And even the people who rebelled against them, the philosophers of the 18th and 19th century, ultimately adopted the morality of Christianity, so they couldn't even give that up. So the collectivism, the morality, the virtue of sacrifice, the seeking, striving for a higher good, whether the higher good is the proletarian's utopia or God and heaven, it's all the same thing. It's all in, or the Aryan race's utopia and heaven. It's all basically the same thing, and same ideology. And that ideology is, because it's inculcated from when we're very, very young, through every institution that we have, has a very powerful hold on people. And it's that hold we have to break. And it's hard to break that hold. And that's why it's so hard. It's why it's so hard to do. Because they have a real moral hold on people from when they're very, very young. So our job is to break that. And it turns out it's really hard. Really hard. And they destroy selfishness because selfishness is an affront to them. It's an affront to their altruistic collectivist view of the world. When they see somebody successful, when they see somebody productive, when they see somebody happy, that's an affront to the idea that our purpose in life is to sacrifice for the masses, for something, for God. Thomas Schubaram, Chavez, wow. He also majorly screwed over the Filipino labor community. I didn't know that. I don't know anything about that. That's great. I'm not surprised, though. I'm not surprised. He was not a good human being, turns out. James. Many dictators repressed homosexuals. Khomeini is gay. Hitler may have been gay. Homosexuals repressed in religious cultures channel their self-hatred into a power-lusting drive for vengeance. I doubt that very much. I really doubt that. I don't know None of us know that Khamenei is gay, the son. That is rumor and speculation. We certainly have no evidence that Hitler is gay. Maybe somebody is speculating. Stalin wasn't gay, as far as I can tell. Mao Zedong wasn't gay. The guy ordered, Deng Xiaoping ordered the soldiers to fire on the students in Tiananmen Square, wasn't gay. No, I can't see any correlation between gayness, homosexuality, and dictatorships. Was Saddam or Gaddafi gay? I don't know, but I have no evidence to suggest that. On the other hand, we have strong evidence to suggest that many of the most creative people in history have been gay. Certainly Leonardo da Vinci, who was not repressed about it, I think, and Michelangelo, who was repressed about it, were probably gay. And, a lot of the creative people over the last 500 years were probably gay. So very dangerous to try to draw conclusions like that. And I just don't think it's true. And I don't think there's enough evidence, and certainly not enough evidence to suggest that that's what drove them towards being dictators. That's the power lust is some kind of vengeance. I don't think that's true. It could be in a certain individual's case, but I don't think there's a phenomena of that I can see. Phenomenon like that. All right, Jennifer. Yaron, did you hear about the guy from Dearborn who drove a car into a Jewish school in West Bloomfield? Everyone okay except him. You and I drove very near that school once coming back from Northwood. Yeah, I did read about it. I saw it, I think, while I was gone. Look, you're going to see more of that. And it's going to be more and more, the community is going to tolerate it because of the growing anti-Semitism. And it doesn't surprise me it's coming out of Dearborn. I guess he was a Muslim who did it. But it's not only going to be Muslims. You're going to see more attacks on Jews. Right? So I guess it's not surprising in that sense, but really horrible for the people at the school and for the people in that community. Yeah, the security guard shot him and saved him from doing real harm and killing kids. Thanks, Jennifer. Thought criminal. Is USA going to clear the strait by itself? I mean, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe they will get some support. Again, there's mixed signals from various allies. It does look like this afternoon that the NATO countries might send some ships. It did look earlier this week that Japan was going to send some. India's already escorting some ships out. So it might not be by itself. You might get UAE. Maybe they have some boats that they can escort the ships out. So I don't think it's going to be America alone. But if it has to be America alone, so be it. So be it. It's worth it. Mary Elaine, I think the First Amendment is far more important than the Second, which they value more. Which they value more tells me something about a person. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's all about ideas, and therefore it's all about the First Amendment. It's all about the ability to express those ideas, to argue for those ideas, to write about those ideas, to challenge other people's ideas. The First Amendment is the most crucial amendment when it comes to changing the world and protecting us from tyranny. So yes, I think it's absolutely the First Amendment supersedes all others when it comes to that issue, right? When it comes to protecting us, right? Huh. I'm just checking to see. Oil prices 99, so they're getting close to 100. Gold is down a lot, which is, the way all this moves, particularly gold and Bitcoin, is really fascinating, right? Why would gold go down during this war when geopolitical instability is rising? You'd expect gold to go up, but it's already so high It already reflects all those risks. So a lot of this trading is basically just speculation. The same with silver. Silver's down like 6% today, down to 75, way down from its peak of 115 in January. Why is it? Why is that? I don't know. And gold, of course, is down from 5,400, but or even 5,400 in January, and well over 5,000 just a few weeks ago, just when the war began. So why is war driving the price of gold down? Right. All kind of interesting phenomena. I mean, I think these are primarily speculative assets. I think S&P is down a lot, NASDAQ's down a lot because they're afraid that because of Israel bombing the gas facilities, that this is going to create even more of an energy crunch, and that energy crunch is going to raise prices and going to drive America and the world economy into recession. That's what's being priced. But if you look at the S&P 500 kind of year to date, it's down 3%. And, so it's not like even investors think this is a major economic catastrophe yet. No, it could go down a lot more. It's gone down a lot less because of this war than it did in April when Trump announced his tariffs last April. In the last month, the S&P 500 is down 3.73%. It's just underwhelming in terms of the negative response. Half of that, by the way, is just today. All right, Jamie, Elon, this is a quote from Elon, I guess. If a national draft ever becomes necessary, Tesla will not be usable to flee the country. Hopefully it never comes to that, but technology shouldn't be used to avoid civil duty. Your thoughts? Yeah, I mean, Elon has become a kind of a nationalist. That's authoritarian. Why shouldn't it be used to flee not civil duty, to flee the abuse of rights by the state? So, that quote right there, if it's a real quote from Elon Musk, would mean that I will never buy a Tesla. I mean, all of you who own Teslas, think about it. If Elon Musk is saying, I won't let people use Teslas to flee the country when there's a draft, that means Elon Musk is willing to flip a switch and disable your car because he disagrees with you about some government action. I don't want anybody having that kind of control over my car. So, I mean, that quote alone, will prevent me from ever buying a Tesla. I mean, I know he has that capability, but his willingness to use it in the name of nationalism, in the name of statism, is just despicable. And it starts with the draft. But what if I disagree with the government? I'm using my car to go to events where I talk against Trump. Will Tesla stop me from using my car for those purposes in the future? Not Trump, J.D. Vance or whatever. It could possibly be. So yeah, I'm buying a Tesla. Thanks, Elon, for clarifying where you stand. That's a pretty fascist thing to say. All right. Why do you believe Trump's Operation Venezuela was a positive? Isn't it just more arbitrary thuggery? Yeah, but thuggery can sometimes work. And in this case, it looks like it has. That is, the job of America is not to establish democracies or free liberal democracies around the world. The job of America is to take regimes that are hostile to the United States, and if possible, and at low cost, make them friendly towards the United States. And if that friendly towards the United States happens to be a dictator, so be it. The United States has functioned this way in foreign policy forever. And in this case, you got rid of Maduro. You've got a replacement thug in Venezuela, but it's a thug that's willing to not be hostile to the U.S. The consequence of that is they're willing to do what we want them to do vis-a-vis oil. They're willing not to support Cuba which might lead ultimately to the fall of the Cuban regime. And it basically signals a real shift in Latin America. And hopefully, over time, the regime in Venezuela itself will change. That is, the thuggish regime that exists there will be replaced by a more freedom-loving regime. So, sometimes Trump does things that turn out to be good, not because he's good or is thoughtful or considerate or, have a strategy and plans, but just sometimes the world is even worse and things, work out. Sometimes that happens. What did I want to do? I was going to gift 5 memberships. Let's see who gets that. All right, so you got gifted a membership. See what you do with it. All right, thank you, Michael. Not your average algorithm. Part 1, while Republican parts of the country tend to be cleaner, more well-kept, they don't have the smart, creative minds, the very bland, cookie-cutter areas. While leftist cities have the smart, creative people, they have all the riffraff, all the homeless, the graffiti on the walls, and decaying infrastructure. Why this disconnect? Well, I'm not even sure that's true. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you define. I mean, are there any Republican cities in the country? What's a Republican city? Is there a Republican-controlled city? Is Mississippi cleaner than California? Is Miami cleaner than, I don't know, Dallas? Dallas is run by a Democrat. I don't know how you come to these conclusions about cleanliness and riffraff. I don't see the correlation. There's riffraff everywhere. Cleanliness has a lot to do with the riffraff, but also has a lot to do with how new the city is, rather than whether it's a Democratic or Republican mayor. There are almost no Republican mayors in cities. The big cities all run by Democrats. But why are more creative people tend to be in cities? A, because cities is where the action is. Cities is where civilization happens. Creative people tend to be on the left because the left, at least nominally, claims to stand for reason and thought and enlightenment. Again, not the far left, but conventional left. And the right stands for going back to 1220. If you're an engineer, do you want to support people who want to go back to 1220? Do you want to support people who think creationism and reject evolution? I think part of the reason is the rejection of science by the right, which causes creative, productive people to shun them. Remo says, value for value. Thank you, Remo. I appreciate that. All right, we're only $91 short of our third hour goal. And indeed, we are into the third hour. So $91 is, three $30 questions. 4.5 $20 questions. It's all doable. It's doable. Wesley Lopez, why are people in favor of intervention against Iran generally, against sending U.S. ground troops? What's the principled argument here? I mean, there is no principled argument. It's a pragmatist argument. They want somehow magically for America to win, but they don't want to overcommit. They don't want, they don't want to see body bags. They don't want actual fighting on the street, and primarily that is because they view war through the prism of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, which the United States basically lost. So it's people don't want ground forces because they are unfortunately shaped by, since Vietnam, America's not won a war. And they're afraid they won't win it again, and there'll be body bags, and people will die. Americans will die. An air campaign seems cleaner, safer, very few people die, easier to comprehend, and not as entangled, and you don't stay as long. Whereas ground troops, you stay long. I have no objection to ground troops. The war would be shorter and quicker, and in a better outcome if we had ground troops on the ground. But that's not going to happen. Maybe on the island, the one island, but not a significant number of ground troops they're not going to be deployed. Christian, if Europeans don't stand up for their own interests like Hormuz, they are truly lost. I am disappointed. The rationale seems to be, let's give it to Trump and cripple ourselves. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that it's a disgrace that Europeans are not doing this, are not joining. It's not, I get that they don't want to support Trump because Trump's being mean to them and Trump didn't support them with Ukraine. But it's still suicidal. It's still crippling for themselves. The fall of the Iranian regime will be a huge benefit to the Europeans. Huge benefit to the Europeans. And they should support it. But Europe is not particularly good at pursuing self-interest. Wesley, if the Iranian regime is still standing several months from now, would you support a full ground invasion? I would. Granted, I've supported a full ground invasion for a long, long time. I think you can get regime change from the air, but they'd have to keep doing it for a while, for weeks and weeks. And I hope they have the stamina to do it. I will bet you guys anything that if the United States, Europe, and whoever else joins them decide to accompany ships out of the Hormuz Straits, less than 5 ships will ever be, very, very few of the Allied ships will be sunk. The Iranians are incompetent. They won't be able to deal with these ships, and they won't be able to, they don't have the resources to sink these ships. Iran is the ultimate paper tiger. They have a big war. They talk big stuff. But look at what they've done. They've done nothing to Israel. They barely scratched the surface of Israel. Yeah, about 15 people are dead. 15 civilians are dead. No military facility has been touched. No military commander, no political leader, nothing. They can't do it. Yeah, they bombed some facilities, and 8 American soldiers are dead. 8. Not a single ship in the Gulf of Oman has been hit. I mean, this was supposed to be a mighty Iranian navy. 100 of their boats have been sunk. 100 of their boats have been sunk. They are pathetic. Military experts have been wrong on these things from the beginning. So, if done properly, with the right softening of, and already we've seen the destruction of the Iranian Navy, and today or yesterday they started bombing the shore and bombing the missiles and everything else. But the reality is that people are always fearful that somehow the bad guys are somehow going to cause massive damage to good guys. They're so incompetent. The Iranian, IRCG are so incompetent and has been so incompetent for so many years. It's time we learned. The fact that there are very, very risk-averse generals in the American Army or Navy or whatever does not impress me at all. I don't have any of their intelligence briefings, but again, based on my knowledge, which is limited, I will take the bet that very few of whatever they've got will actually, I wouldn't do it tomorrow. You've got to keep bombing the shoreline. You've got to take out their fast boats. You've got to still do some work. But when they, within a week, within 10 days, they could be escorting ships out there with very, very little damage being taken, if you will. I've been right on military issues over the last few years since the Ukrainian invasion. Somebody should do a prediction thing of my predictions versus reality. I'd say 90% of the time. I predicted what happened to Russians in Ukraine. I predicted Israel in Gaza. I predicted Israel, Lebanon, and how easy and how few casualties were taken. I predicted all those things, and I predicted what would happen the first days of this war, in the 12-day war. So at some point, I gained some credibility, maybe, with some people. All right, Jeffrey. People arguing Israel forced America's hand in Iran never seem to identify the mechanism of coercion used by Israel. Epstein. It's Epstein. See, Epstein was an Israeli agent, and the Israelis have tapes of Trump with young girls, and that's how they get Trump to do everything that they want. Right? And it's not just Trump. They probably have tapes on everybody. That's the story these people tell themselves. They come up with other crazy stories as well. Right? Tommy. Israel stole the Golan Heights? You really need to study up on your history a little bit and study up on actually what happened in war. The Golan Heights was taken in a war of self-defense, not stolen. 1967. Not today, 67. Thomas, how much gold should you hold for global catastrophe? Why that amount? Why would you use it? And what would you do once it runs out? You have to weigh what's the probability of a global catastrophe. It's not high. So you don't want to hold a lot of your assets in gold. I would put 10%, 5 to 10% of my assets in gold. It's an end of the world scenario where banking system has collapsed and you need the gold in order to buy weapons and food. And you buy weapons and food with it. But the probability of such a world occurring is very, very small, so you put a small amount of your wealth in it. Christian, I am also fed up with the media being so negative about the war. I agree with you. Today, I put some names on my Facebook wall one should rather consult as experts on this topic. Your name was part of that recommendation. Great. Thank you, Christian. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not the only one. There are other people who know exactly what's involved. Keep stealing land from your millions of Arab neighbors. The reality is Israel's stolen no land. You don't want us to take your land? Don't attack us. It's very easy. Israel has only taken land when it's been attacked. And when peace has been negotiated, Israel has returned land, like the Sinai Desert, which it returned. So don't attack her, don't attack Israel, and Israel won't take your land. But if you attack Israel, then Israel will take enough land to be able to defend itself. Very, very simple and straightforward. All around self-defense, all around the principle of non-initiation of force and the principle of defending yourself. Remo, so many people in the West want to see Israel and the U.S. lose this war. Just disgusting. I know. It just is evil. It really is evil. Oyvind, God. There it is. Are you going to have a conversation with Michael Leibowitz on Iran? I think it would be interesting. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I'm really busy. I really, really, really am busy. I'm traveling a lot. I'm teaching at the Institute. I'm doing a show every day. I cover all these topics on the show. All you get from the debate like that is gotchas. I mean, I don't know any argument that he's made that I haven't responded to on this show. So, yeah, I think it could be interesting. But the benefit of it is marginal, and it's time-consuming. And so if I have the time, I'll do it. but I'm not committing to do it because I know what my schedule is like. I'm way behind on a number of projects that I deem much more important than that. And until I catch up with those things, it's unlikely. And it's basically targeted at an insider audience. The insider audience listens to Michael, listens to me, and you guys can make up your own mind. I don't think us debating adds that much to it beyond, and I respect Michael. I think he's wrong, but I respect him. And listen to him, listen to me, and decide. Read what Leonard Peikoff has written about this. Read Winning the Unwinnable War, what Ilan Journo has written about it. Read all the content and make up your mind. I don't think it's that hard. Anyway, that's my main view. But I don't have anything against it. It's just time consuming. God, I'm so behind. All right, Neely Dan, is the duty to God, the Bible, or whatever ancient book, a duty to hate life? No, I think often the consequences are hating life, but I don't think it's explicitly a duty to hate life. And I think hating life is much more of a Christian thing than an Old Testament Jewish thing. It's much more of a New Testament thing. So I don't think the duty to sacrifice for God, to sacrifice your life for God is an expression of a hatred of life. But I don't think there's any duty to hate life. Waco, Bach or Vivaldi, if you had to choose one? Probably Bach. I mean, there's a sense in which I prefer the music of Vivaldi, but Bach has more and richer and more variety. So Bach is the real genius there. So I think probably Bach. But I'm not not my favorite era in music, right? So I'm not a huge fan of either. Vivaldi is easier to consume. Jeffrey says, fingers crossed for the OPA course. There's another one that and another thing that I'd like to do and can't figure out where I'm going to have the time to do it. I'd love to do the OPA course or the OPA study group, but where am I going to find the time to do it? So there's a lot of pulls on me, and I have to admit that a debate with Michael is not high on my priority list. Okay, Adam, the RU is preventing Orban from becoming a permanent dictator of Hungary. Is it the EU? Is this a good reason to support a federal level government structure and to be against more local sovereignty? Yeah, I mean, I think the 14th Amendment, I think it's the 14th, is good. That is, I think you need a strong federal government to prevent local governments, like state governments in the United States, from massively violating individual rights. So, for example, instituting slavery or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, I think that if Europe became a federation, it would be ultimately good for Europe. It would have to have a real constitution, a proper constitution, which it doesn't today. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens to Orban. Orban's going to face an election here soon, and there's a good chance he loses. And the EU is probably going to force him to uphold the election, to accept the results, where he would probably prefer not to, and the Russians would probably help him not to. So yes, federal power is important. I'm big on federal power. I think federalism is great, but it's only within certain bounds. The federal government has to make sure that individual rights fundamentally are being protected. Roman, should we trade with Chinese companies? Taxes for the PLA versus more capitalism in China. Does it depend on how important Taiwan is to us? I think it's ultimately depends on your evaluation. Is China a real military enemy of the United States? Is it a Is it a threat? Is it an enemy? And my view is that it's not yet. My evaluation, it's not yet. It might be, but it's not yet. And therefore, I don't think the government should get involved in telling us not to trade with China. Now, you as an individual might decide not to trade with China because it's an authoritarian regime and it might be an enemy one day. And in some regions in China, they use the equivalent of slave labor. You might decide you just would rather not deal with China. But that's an individual moral decision, not a decision the state should make unless they define it as an enemy. And I don't think we have enough grounds to define it as an enemy yet. Clark, what causes aging? Does reverse aging violate laws of physics, of entropy? That's why it hasn't been done. I don't know what causes aging. I'm not a scientist. I mean, obviously, you know, just like with a machine, use erodes and you know, everything is less smooth and less efficient, and ultimately it all falls apart if you run it for long enough. And I think the human body is very similar. There are probably lots and lots and lots of causes for aging. The aging process is unbelievably complex. I don't think reversing aging is a violation of the laws of physics, but I do think that reversing aging is really, really, really difficult problem in biology because I don't think there's one cause. So there's not going to be one cure, one way to reverse it. I think it's just an issue of the complexity of the problem. And over time, over many, many decades, I think it will be solved. Sadly, I don't think it will be solved before I pass away, but I think it will be solved one day, and you might even get to a point where you can reverse aging, where you can become younger, you can be rejuvenated. But I just don't think it happens quickly because the level of science that needs to still be discovered, there's so much, in other words, that still needs to be discovered. Raphael, hi, Yaron. I'm upset Timothy didn't win the Oscar with his performance on Marty Supreme. Did you watch the movie? What do you think of it? I haven't watched the movie yet, no. I will when it comes to streaming, but I haven't. And I didn't watch the Oscars. Who did win? I don't even know who won Best Actor, or if I know, because I haven't seen many of the movies this year. Roman says he's going to keep me alive. That'd be great. I appreciate that. I mean, I don't want to just be kept alive. I want to be kept alive in good shape. Like, don't connect me to machines and keep me alive. I actually have it in writing that you shouldn't do that. Let me die. But in good shape, I'd like to live for a long time. All right, guys. Thank you to all the super chatters. You did great today. Thank you to all the supporters of the show. In whatever way you support the show, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think I thanked all the stickers, so I appreciate that as well. I don't know if I got to Gail and Raphael and their stickers. Maybe I didn't thank them, but thank you, Gail and Raphael and Jack. And Stringer Bell, I remember thanking. All right. Thanks, guys. I will see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.